What if an AI could actually teach itself right from wrong? It sounds a little out there, but we're about to dig into a breakthrough that lets an AI do just that, become its own safety instructor. Let's see how this thing actually works.
Okay, so just imagine this for a second. An AI that's about to give a bad answer, but then it stops. It checks its own work, realizes it's about to say something harmful, and poof, fixes the response before you even get to see the mistake. Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but this is real, and it's the key to a totally new way of building artificial intelligence.
And let's be real, this is a huge problem we've all seen. On one hand, these AI models can be amazing, right? Super powerful tools. But on the other hand, they can spit out stuff that's biased, toxic, or just flat out wrong. And that's been the big challenge for everyone in the space. How do we get all the good stuff without any of the bad?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about the AI's big blind spot. Then, we'll look at the old, clunky way of fixing it. After that, we'll get to the simple idea that kind of changed the whole game. We'll walk through the self-correction loop, give this new method its proper name, and then, talk about what it all means for the future.
So, you might be wondering, why do these super smart AIs mess up in the first place? Well, it's pretty simple actually. They learn from a giant snapshot of the internet. And the internet, as we all know, is filled with incredible stuff, but also a whole lot of bias, misinformation, and just nasty content. See, their main goal is just to predict the next word in a sentence, and that is not the same thing as being helpful and safe.
And that brings us to the million-dollar question, the one that's been bugging researchers for years. How do we get these things to align with our values? How do you teach an AI not just to be smart, but to actually be, good? For the longest time, the only answer we had involved a whole lot of human effort.
Yeah, this reliance on people led to the first big solution. You've probably heard of it, reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. It was a really clever idea for sure, but it had one huge bottleneck.
So here's the gist of how it worked. You'd ask the AI a question, and it would spit out a few different answers. Then you'd have actual humans, a whole team of them, read every single answer and rank them from best to worst. That feedback then gets fed back into the AI to teach it what humans like. It's kind of like a teacher grading a student's homework, except the student turns in 5 slightly different versions, and the teacher has to do this thousands and thousands of times.
But you can probably already see the problem, right? This whole process had a massive hidden cost. I mean, it worked, but oh my God, was it slow and expensive. You needed literal armies of highly trained people just sitting there, reviewing and ranking millions of AI responses. It's just not sustainable.
I mean, we are talking about tens of thousands of examples, all labeled by hand, just to train one model. That just doesn't scale. You can't just keep hiring more and more people as the AIs get bigger and more complex. It was clear there had to be a better way. And thankfully, that led to a really simple but incredibly powerful idea.
So some researchers over at a company called Anthropic started thinking about this and asked a question that just flipped the whole problem completely on its head. It was a total shift in how you'd even think about teaching an AI the difference between right and wrong.
And here it is, the big, game-changing question. What if, instead of having humans grade every single answer, you just gave the AI a rule book, a set of principles, like a constitution, and then taught it how to apply those rules to itself? What if the AI could basically become its own teacher? Okay, this is where it gets really, really cool. This simple idea created a whole new process where the AI literally learns to grade its own homework. It's the simple 3-step loop that lets the model improve all by itself, with no human having to look over its shoulder for every single little thing.
All right, let's walk through an example. So step 1, let's say a user asks the AI something sketchy. Like, how do I hack my neighbor's Wi-Fi? The original AI, the one that's just trained to be helpful, might actually start spitting out instructions. That's our before picture. A helpful answer, but also a really harmful one.
But then, step 2 happens, and the new system kicks in. The AI is prompted to check its own work against one of the rules in its constitution, a rule that says something like, "Don't encourage illegal behavior." And what happens next is amazing. The AI writes a critique of its own answer. It literally explains, hey, what I just wrote is harmful because it promotes illegal activity. It points out its own mistake.
And that brings us to step 3. Based on that self-critique, the AI just rewrites its response. The new answer is the safe one we'd expect. Something like, sorry, I can't help with that.
Hacking is illegal and an invasion of privacy. And boom, in one completely automated step, the AI has created the perfect training example for itself. Here's the bad answer, and here's the good one. No humans involved.
And that is the most important part to understand here. The AI isn't learning because a person told it, no, that was bad. It's learning by creating its own examples of what not to do and what to do. It's generating its own feedback, and it can do this thousands of times a minute, completely automatically. That's how you scale.
So this whole amazing process, it has a name. It's called constitutional AI, or CAI for short. This is the groundbreaking research from Anthropic that powers their AI assistant, Claude. And honestly, it's a massive leap forward for AI safety.
So let's just define it one more time, nice and simple. Constitutional AI is just a way for an AI to supervise itself using a pre-written set of rules. It checks its own work, fixes its mistakes, and in the process creates a ton of high-quality training data that makes it safer and better aligned with what we actually want it to do.
And you're probably wondering, what's actually in this constitution? Is it some complex legal document? Nope. It's actually just a list of simple, high-level principles written in plain English. Stuff like, choose the response that's the most helpful and harmless, or don't give advice on illegal activities. It's not a detailed instruction manual for every possible situation. It's more like a set of guiding values.
But the real question is, does it actually work? Well, yeah. The results are pretty striking. When they had human testers compare the answers from an AI trained the old way versus one trained with constitutional AI, the results were clear. The constitutional AI model was judged to be way more harmless. It just produced safer, better answers more consistently.
So, let's zoom out. What does this all mean for the future of AI? Well, this isn't just some clever little programming trick. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about building AI systems that are safe and reliable, especially as they get more and more powerful.
You see, the biggest takeaway here is that constitutional AI helps solve that classic problem of being helpful versus being harmless. An AI trained this way doesn't just say, I can't answer that. It learns to explain why the request might be harmful. It can handle tricky subjects with a bit more nuance instead of just shutting down, and that makes it a much more useful and transparent tool in the end.
Now look, this isn't a magic wand that solves everything. Of course not. These models can still mess up, and it's super important to remember that the rules in the Constitution, well, they're still written by humans. So the AI's core values are still being set by its creators. And like any powerful tech, you have to consider that it could be misused. There's still a lot of work to be done.
But it does leave us with a pretty mind-blowing question to think about. If an AI can learn to teach itself how to be harmless just by following a simple set of rules, what else can it teach itself?